Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Danny Winokur, General Manager, AppDynamics.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome to AppDynamics Transform 2020. We are really thrilled to be hosting our second annual event, and this time live from our headquarters here in San Francisco. I want to thank everybody who's with us here live in the room, as well as the thousands of people that we have tuning in online, including, by the way, a special group that has gathered live in London in the evening there in a theater where they are watching this together in a watch party. So thank all of you for joining us. You're going to find that over the next 90 minutes, we're going to be able to share with you a lot of very exciting developments and give you updates on the strategy that we've been pursuing around the central nervous system that we announced and launched last year at this event. And we're going to, of course, also share updates and new innovations that we've been delivering and bringing to market with our product. You're going to hear from a number of executives, both from AppDynamics and from Cisco, who are here to join us. And we also are really honored to have a number of key customers who have been really great friends of AppDynamics over the years, who are going to be here to help you sort of see how these technologies, how the strategies that we've been pursuing for a world centered on applications is actually coming to life in real ways inside some of the most iconic brands and storied organizations in the world. So before we jump in and get started, Chuck Robbins, who is the CEO of Cisco, wanted to share a few thoughts on his perspective on why applications have become so important and the event that we're going to be holding today. So if we run to Chuck, please.
Hi, I'm Chuck Robbins, Chairman and CEO of Cisco, and I'm thrilled to help kick off AppD Transform this year. After spending a great deal of time with many of you and customers across different industries from around the world, it is very clear to me how important applications are to all of your businesses. They drive everything that you do, and as the pace of technology continues to accelerate, our customers are challenged to continue to build faster and deploy applications anywhere. And it's so critical that businesses and all of us pay attention now more than ever, because consumers have a zero-tolerance policy for anything other than a simple, fast, and exceptional digital experience. And it's no surprise that we recently found 61% of people say the first thing they do after waking up is check their digital device before anything else. We know applications are how customers and consumers engage, buy, consume goods and services, and so much more. And at Cisco, we're focused on how the application and infrastructure worlds come together more seamlessly to deliver these digital experiences by helping you and our other customers reimagine their applications, secure their data, transform their infrastructure, and ultimately empower their teams. I could not be more proud of all that our AppDynamics team has done and will continue to do to help our customers along their digital journeys. Today, you'll get to hear more from our team around what's new in the IT ecosystem, and I want to thank all of you for spending time with us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
All right, so before we jump in further into some of our guests and into some of the presentations on the product details, I thought it would be helpful to start out by giving you a sense for what we've seen out in the market, talking to many of you and many other large organizations around the world. And what we see is what you see here, which is that we have now all shifted into a new competitive landscape where the way that we actually measure our competitive strength is based on the experiences that are delivered in our digital applications. And the expectations around those applications have been ever rising higher and higher because all of us as individuals, whether we're in our role as employees or whether we're in our role as consumers, we have come to expect beautifully designed, highly performant, simple experiences in our digital applications. And that's a bar that's been set for us by companies that were born in the cloud, design-led, digital from their inception, the Googles, the Ubers, the Facebooks of the world. But now it doesn't matter what industry you're in, right? If you're a transportation company, a healthcare company, financial services company, retail company, it doesn't matter, right? You now are held to that same bar because whether you're delivering applications internally to your employees or externally to your customers, they are expecting as individuals to have that same beautiful, highly performing, well-designed experience that is effective. And if you can't deliver it, you actually become competitively disadvantaged from those who can. So we've done a survey called the App Attention Index, where we actually got some quantitative data around how important these experiences are. And these are a few of the highlights here. So 49% of the respondents in the survey said that they actually switched suppliers because of a poor digital experience. Think about that. Half of people effectively are willing to leave because the digital experience isn't meeting those expectations. On the other side of that coin, you've got 50% also who are willing to pay more for your service if it's better than a competitor's, right? So there's the downside and the upside there. And we also know from research that's been done that if you have even 100 milliseconds of latency on a page load, that you can lose up to 1% of the sales volume that you otherwise would have had. So think about that, 100 milliseconds of latency, 1% of sales. It's enormously expensive when things don't work right and you're not delivering the competitive experiences that are up to par with those user expectations and beating that of your competitors. And so what is this driving? It's driving a change in the technologies that we all rely upon so that we can actually deliver these experiences. We've had historically these three sort of epic shifts in technology and IT, broadly speaking, from mainframes to client server and from client server to web technologies. But none of those technologies have been able to allow us to move with the agility and the velocity that is required for a world where experience is the competitive currency. And the reason for that is that the way you win in a world where experience is the competitive currency is you have to iterate very, very quickly with high velocity. Because one thing that we know is that executives sitting in a conference room, cooking up an experience and putting it into an application are going to get it wrong about 100% of the time, right? The way you actually get the winning experience is you iterate very quickly with user research, you implement hypotheses that are informed by that research quickly in code, you get the code in front of users, you have real-time data and telemetry that gives you a view into what's working and what's not. You readjust your hypothesis, you re-implement in code, and you turn that crank as fast as you can, right? And the more shots on goal, the faster you can go through that iterative cycle, the more quickly you beat the competitors to what is actually the performing and winning experience that pleases them, allows them to get done what they're trying to accomplish in your app, and produces the winning business experience. That is what is driving the adoption of cloud and microservices. It offers the promise as a technology stack of being able to take smaller, more agile teams, allow them to take smaller components of an application experience and iterate on it in a very quick, high-velocity way with those rapid cycle times that are going to allow them to get to the winning experience, right? So that's great. That's the promise of it. But there's also a downside, which is those other three generations of technology haven't gone away. We're running large enterprise organizations. We can't throw away all of our technology investments from the past decade or more. And so we end up with environments that typically look something like this. They're hybrid, they're multi-cloud, they're distributed, and they're complex. We may prioritize putting some of the experience-driven components of our application out, let's say, in the most modern, fastest-moving cloud technologies where we can iterate quickly, but it may be talking in the same application to client server or to web technologies and even accessing in many of our organizations data that is still being driven out of mainframes. And in that kind of an environment, things have to still work together seamlessly to deliver that flawless experience. It's really hard to do, and one of the things that makes it incredibly hard to do is the human part of this, which is that we're running organizations that still have historical roles and operating processes. And so you see situations like this, where you're typically going to have an app team that is focused on the application topologies and the technologies that are at the upper layers of the stack, and you have infrastructure teams that are now managing this complex, diverse array of different infrastructure technology stacks, and they tend to be focused on those infrastructure technologies and the workload management of them. And these two perspectives that are represented by these two organizations actually make it harder for us to move with the velocity that we need. And that results in situations that sometimes look like this, which is the typical IT war room. Something's going wrong. The business has moved into the application, and you've got something wrong and people are finger pointing, right? They're saying, hey, my system says the data here, I'm looking good. Your system says, oh, yours is looking good too. Well, something must not really be wrong. But over on the other side of the hallway, you've got the business users who are now prosecuting their business initiatives inside your application. And they're pulling their hair out because the business results are suffering. and they're not able to achieve the results that they depend on because of problems with application performance or application experience. And the costs when that happens are unacceptably high, right? We know that about half of organizations, when they have an outage, it's costing them in hard dollars $100,000, and almost a quarter are having incidents that are at $500,000 each. And when you then consider the fact that in many organizations that we go in and work with, they're having outages as frequently as multiple times per week. In some cases, we've gone into organizations that are having outages multiple times per day. And this doesn't even speak of the reputational damage and the user ill will that I spoke about earlier, where we know there's an abandonment rate that you actually are subject to when your users leave and actually go speak badly about your application, not even captured in these numbers. So it becomes enormously expensive. So this begs the question of what do we do about it, right? Well, we've got to start working differently. The operating model of most of our organizations, when we zoom out to look at the whole organization, is still often siloed between business teams, development teams, and the operations teams. The problem is that when the business is in the application, it means the business initiatives are now coded. And when the infrastructure that the operations teams are managing is also now being coded by developers who are using cloud technologies and modern DevOps techniques, you have to take these three teams and get them to move together in lockstep and coordinate with one another. And this is what we call biz dev ops as an operating model. It just expresses this notion that these previously separate siloed teams have to come together in this intimate, tight loop operating model where they make decisions together, they plan together, they execute together, they assess and evaluate together, and they go round and round together, because if they can do that, they can achieve the velocity that allows you to iterate and again get to the winning experience. If they fail to do it, you are a laggard and you face an existential threat of being disrupted by the competitors who are able to do this well. Now, when you look at how to actually make the transition to that biz dev ops operating model, you have to start looking at some of the challenges within operations. Because even within just the operations silo, there are sub-silos. And we typically see separate sub-teams for app ops and infra ops and network ops and sec ops, and they're all typically using separate tools that they've built up over what is oftentimes a decade or more that they're loyal to. And they're different sources of truth with different data sets that they each believe, but which don't necessarily correlate or apply any sort of consistency of a view across the different teams. So what we've been doing at AppDynamics in partnership with Cisco is beginning to lay the foundation of solving this problem broadly by upgrading these traditional legacy controllers, these legacy systems, to modern software-based domain controllers that bring software intelligence and smarts and open data interfaces to each of those traditional control systems so that data can be exchanged and correlated, that allows these different personas within the organization to still use a tool that's familiar or of choice, but to actually see the same correlated view of data expressed through their tool of choice. So that when they show up in those war rooms now, instead of finger pointing, they're actually looking at a single shared source of truth with correlated data up and down across the different layers of the stack that allow them to move into a higher velocity operating model. And this is a vision that we have that we refer to as the central nervous system for IT. It's the vision that we announced last year. It's been a very exciting year of progress and innovation. And a lot of the rest of the event, we're going to be sharing with you quite a bit more detail around the progress that we've made over the past year in building out the strategy, as well as in delivering and paying off some of the promises as we continue down the path of what we believe will be a 10-year journey to really fully modernize these systems. Okay. So with that introduction, I would like to now shift and bring up one of our very special guests. So we have here with us today Cisco's Chief Strategy Officer, Anuj Kapoor, who's going to join me for a conversation to talk about the role that AppDynamics and applications play in Cisco's broader strategy. Anuj, you want to come on up?
Thanks. How are you? I'm well. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, well.
So we've been talking about applications, or at least I've been talking about applications. What's your favorite application? What do you rely on?
It's a tough one. I actually have two. One is LastPass, which is a password manager that I use. And then there's another application which I find more interesting that I use to keep track of our customers and competitors, and you may have heard of it. It's called TMZ.
Right, that's where all our customers are there.
It's a watering hole for the influencers, and I'd be remiss if I didn't do.
So what do you do when LastPass and TMZ aren't working? How do you function?
I mean, just life falls apart, and pharmaceutical products help to get through the day. But no, I mean, it's interesting. I think Chuck talked about the stat that when you wake up, I think 60% of the people reach for their digital device to see what's going on. I'm just wondering, what do the other 40% do?
Exactly. They're non-functional lying in bed, I guess.
Yeah, or they sleep with their fax machine.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So one of the things that Chuck also spoke to a little bit was these new customer promises that Cisco has rolled out. And the very first one of those is around reimagining your applications, which I think for a lot of people is probably not what they're used to hearing from Cisco, is that Cisco's sort of first starting point is reimagining your applications. You want to maybe sort of share a perspective on sort of how that came to be and why that's our first promise?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in some ways, Cisco has always been in the application business. Mm-hmm. And I made this comment to a number of analysts this morning, which is we build infrastructure for two environments: the application-facing environment and the user-facing environment. And this is a user-facing environment, right? We have users. And in some ways, the job of the infrastructure is to provide users secure access to both data and applications.
Right.
So synthetically, for the last 25 years, application centricity has been a core of what Cisco has done. Mm-hmm. But I think as we started to listen to our customers and as we started to engage with them more meaningfully around exactly what their problem statements were, mm-hmm. It was very clear that, you know, the things that we talk about, application loyalty is the new brand loyalty, your application is your business, and application uptime is effectively the only KPI that matters. It was very important for us to partner with them on the challenge that they felt was of most importance to them.
Yep.
And not only do it in a way that talked about the application as the atomic unit that they care about, but to be able to link to the downstream problem statements of ensuring that the application and the infrastructure and changes in either were more tightly coordinated.
Right, exactly. That up and down the stack, they're actually more and more connected to each other.
That's right.
Yeah, makes total sense. So one of the things I know you do in your role is you go out and spend time in the market, talking to customers, talking to partners, speaking at events. You obviously get a lot of feedback, and I know you've been one of the big champions of the central nervous system vision that we share with Cisco and AppDynamics. You want to maybe share a little bit of how it's resonating, what feedback you're hearing?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the motivation for us thinking about CNS was actually very simple. And I like to use a personal analogy as just to help, which is if you showed up in an emergency room at 3 in the morning, this is what you don't want to see. You don't want to see 10 different doctors that speak 10 different languages, each having a tenth of the information they need to be able to do a diagnosis, more importantly, to be able to do a remediation. So that's fundamentally what we saw in the IT environment, which is the siloed operations and the single sources of truth were effectively impeding decision flow. And depending on sort of what your comedic stance is, there's a phrase called mean time to blame or mean time to innocence, which is how long does it take for me to figure out that I'm actually not responsible so I can breathe. But that ultimately doesn't help the customer with regards to the application experience. So I think increasingly we needed to redefine our view of what it takes to do a very simple KPI, which we increasingly believe a lot of CIOs will measure themselves by 5 years from now, and even today, is my application up?
Right.
And a very simple KPI and a very simple statement in and of itself is underpinned with a level of complexity that is frankly overwhelming the agility that our customers seek to drive. So being able to link the application and the infrastructure tiers to be able to make sure that as one changes, the other changes in a more coordinated manner, in a more predictable manner, and when things fail, to be able to compress the time when time truly matters, to be able to drive root cause remediation in a way that's automated, that's the vision of the CIO.
Right, so then applying the AI, the ML technologies to help the human operator make sense of all that complexity, derive the insights, and then drive the actions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The joke we have is AI is really assisted intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the other things that we've obviously been working on at AppDynamics and with Cisco is, to the point of what we've been discussing, figuring out technically how do we actually stitch together these data sets across what I tend to refer to as the different data domains, right? We have the business domain with the business IQ data. We have the end user experience domain with the experience journey map that we'll talk more about at the event. We have the application domain on the back end with what we call the business transaction. And then we have the layers of infrastructure that you were referring to, obviously, with compute, with network, and then the security wrapper that's put all around it. And so we've done things there where we've now begun to connect things like the Intersight Workload Optimizer, the ACI Network Fabric, connected with AppDynamics. One of the things that I think people may be wondering is, hey, in a world where things are going to the cloud and there's so much talk about the cloud, why does it matter to connect to that kind of infrastructure instead of just going all in on the cloud?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very valid point. And, you know, the question I always ask our customers is, look, your applications may live in the cloud, but it's unlikely that your users do. And, you know, unless Keanu Reeves is going to walk in and we're all in like some matrix and actually not in the real world, I think for the next foreseeable future, the users that you need to actually access the applications and the data will ultimately not live in an availability zone. So the on-prem infrastructure across at least the top 20,000 organizations that I think AppDynamics uses as a frame of reference, they still are dealing with the migration and the portability of legacy infrastructure that runs their systems of engagement and systems of records. And there's really an economic cost involved in terms of replatforming those systems to a modern and cloud era. And what most customers are telling us is while cloud gives them phenomenal agility that they want to embrace, a lot of the data sets that they need and a lot of the core infrastructure components still reside on-prem. So the world to them is hybrid, and what they need is a performance framework that helps them instrument what they care about, which is principally the application and application experience for success in a world that increasingly is hybrid, distributed, and more importantly, heterogeneous. By that, we mean multi-cloud. So that becomes sort of the problem statement of the hour, which is it's not a single cloud, it's multiple cloud.
Right.
It's not just all cloud, it's on-prem. And it's not just single vendor, it's multi-vendor. So dealing with that fabric and dealing with that complexity and competing against vendors that have no install base, no legacy, no fear, that's the challenge of the hour for them.
Exactly. So being able to connect the public cloud telemetry with things that are private cloud and traditional architectures that are on-premise all into one system then becomes very powerful.
That's correct.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you for being here this morning. Yeah, thank you. All right, so we're going to shift gears a bit now. We have another very special guest. So someone who has been a really great friend of AppDynamics and of Cisco over the years has flown in all the way from Michigan to be here with us this morning. I'd like to welcome up John Hill, who is the CIO and Senior Vice President of Business Planning over at Carhartt. And he's going to help us understand how some of this actually plays out in practice in a real-world environment. And John, why don't you come on up? And as he comes up, I'd like to also just note that John yeah, please. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
So I wanted to just also note that the work that you've done to help transform Carhartt during this amazing 4 years of growth that you've had also won you an award from CIO.com, right, for the CIO 100.
Yeah, that's correct.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Really fantastic. Here, we have a seat. Make yourself comfortable. So why don't you give us a sense on how end-to-end visibility inside Carhartt has been an important part of the transformation that you've been driving? We've talked about visibility in different ways, up and down the stack, horizontally, across hybrid environments. How does it come into play in Carhartt?
Sure. When we started our journey with AppDynamics several years ago, we were really focused on a specific use case around e-commerce. How do we make sure that when that consumer comes to the website that it's available and ready to use? And for those that are familiar with brand and retailers, there's a couple days of the year that are really quite important. And you miss out on those days, and it's a problem. And, we did a lot of great things with that initial piece with Business IQ with AppDynamics. And, we were able to even shift from a business perspective if we saw that we're running out, for example, of a promo and shift it to another promo. Now, that was great as our first step. What was interesting is Business IQ also provided us a really great baseline of key business processes and application performance metrics. And what's interesting is we noticed not too long ago some anomalies in AppDynamics related to logons in the website. Because that baseline existed, we actually detected an attack occurring before our security software did. Because it already understood all those baselines. So our security team was able to get in and resolve that quickly. Once The journey for our customers, though, with the e-commerce is just one part of that journey. That transaction, it goes from the e-commerce back through your ERP, in our case, back to the warehouse management system, and then all the way back again. And so we've worked with AppDynamics to instrument that entire ecosystem so that we understand where those issues are and can resolve those quickly. Now, at the heart, Carhartt is a product company. We make products to serve and protect hardworking folks. But like a lot of brands, you try to shrink the time that it takes to develop new products. So we use a PLM application to manage that. And we were having some challenges with that application, which actually resulted in us having delays on getting samples. You get delays on samples, that lengthens your product cycle time, thus a business impact. We put AppDynamics even on the PLM, and we're able to resolve those and eliminate those misses in terms of key go-to-market milestones.
That's great. So you've been able to actually use business data correlated then to what's going on in the application to do things like even detecting security issues, it sounds like. Yep. And then also bridging the operating model between different systems, more traditional systems, some of the modern front-end systems, and the teams that operate them so that they're able to connect with one another and actually work together much more efficiently.
Yeah, that's correct.
So how has this actually changed the customer experience, and what might be an example where it's actually fixed a technical problem for you?
Okay. For our consumer, that experience with Carhartt occurs in a couple of places. It's either in the digital engagement, like our website, or it's in one of our retailer physical stores or our own direct-to-consumer stores. And we had an issue with our point-of-sale application that was actually run by a partner. So it was run out of their own cloud environment. The challenge was we had a lot of instability. Now, I don't know if any of you have been a retail associate, but there is nothing like the pressure of standing there at a till with a POS not working well and that poor consumer just trying to spend their money with you. And we went through months of instability, and we maybe forced that customer, that partner, to use our instance of AppD and instrument their environment. What took months and months of instability nobody could figure out, it took only 3 days for them to resolve the issue. And now none of my team is having to spend time on that situation. That partner is able to do it themselves. It's freed up a ton of time and certainly improved that consumer experience.
That's amazing. So it's not just the digital experience directly, but in this case, you've got a point-of-sale user who's an employee, but they're delivering that experience straight to the customer, and that customer is now getting a much better experience as a result.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's fantastic. So what other ways has it impacted the business? You were telling me some stories before we got going around some other interesting things that you're doing. I'm interested to have you share that with the group.
Sure. So, I think everybody here, I can't imagine there is a company that doesn't. Data is a key part of how you start your day. You talked about using the apps, but first the app I use in the day is Power BI.
There you go.
I'm sure some of you use a couple of different.
It's not as interesting as TMZ.
Yeah. So, and all the executives, everybody's looking at various dashboards. How is our business doing? What's going on? And there's a number of reasons why that dashboard can be wrong. Jobs failed, something happened, and there's also nothing like that whole fire drill of trying to figure out what's gone wrong, or does this number look right? So we actually used AppD with some synthetic monitoring to analyze those dashboards and be able to do automatic compares and understand there's anomalies that somebody should look into it before the business day even started. So, certainly an interesting use case that we really hadn't thought of.
That's great.
But, one of the teams that just struggled with that, why, this failed, what's wrong?
Right.
Can we automate some of that activity?
That's great. So speaking of automation, I wanted to sort of pick up on that because I recognize that APM and AppDynamics is obviously one part of a larger system of tools that are being used, and you're connecting those tools up in interesting ways to the point of some of the example you just gave. You want to maybe share a little bit on how you're doing that more broadly, and what are some of the other use cases where you've been able to connect things for optimization, service automation, these kinds of things?
So yeah, AppDynamics is probably a key part of our, let's call it a burgeoning AI ops space. So we talked about monitoring and looking at those single pane of glass. Everybody looks at it. Our next step was, well, how can I automate that activity and free up my folks to work on other things. So we've got AppDynamics along with ServiceNow and Turbonomic. I guess it's Cisco Workload Optimizer. And so those together we're using to automate a lot of those activities. So, for example, if we see that we're running high with utilization, we're automatically provisioning some capacity into that environment so nobody's having to do it. Now, we could set it up to reduce the capacity. We haven't got to that point yet. We want somebody to take a quick look at that before we pull back the capacity. And even if you think about the Turbonomic space, the first environment we put that in, we were able to improve the utilization rate from 70% to 92%.
Wow.
And still manage all of that performance that we need through that AI suite.
That's great.
So being able to see the problem and then have the tools to automate that provisioning is certainly key for us.
That's great. So you're connecting the application data into the infrastructure management capabilities of a tool like Turbonomic or the Cisco Workload Optimizer, and then actually get that optimization all the way up to the 90s is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got one last question, which is one of the aspects that I was talking about earlier, sort of the human element and the culture change and the operating model change for how people work, which is sometimes harder than the technology, as we all know. How have you been able to actually affect the organizational, the human, the operating model changes that are necessary for the transformation you've been leading?
It's interesting because your slide earlier, which showed everybody kind of pointing their fingers at one another.
Yeah.
I happen to be part of a great brand and a fantastic technology organization at Carhartt. But like anybody else, there's that opportunity when things aren't going right to blame the other party.
Sure.
It's a network issue. It's something. And every place that we put AppDynamics in as we've gone each part of our ecosystem, we've been able to eliminate those issues because at least everybody understands what the problem is. They're not. Usually they blame the network first.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel
Always.
for network guys.
Always.
So it's eliminated that activity. And even more importantly, with our supplier partners, same thing. You'd have this blame game. As we continue to put this into those environments, it's really critical to us to have that culture with our partners as well as internally. I think what's interesting is, we don't have an endless budget, just like most of the other customers.
Sure.
We need to be able to do this in a cost-effective way. We're able to manage the entire AppDynamics Turbonomic environment with 0.5. It's actually a contractor, 0.5 FTE.
That's amazing. Ease of use. That's great.
So that from an environment perspective, everybody's interested in, hey, how can I get this embedded? My other problem though is just more budget issue of now AppDynamics, so different story, because everybody wants to install that and move forward because they don't see that overhead sitting on their business application.
That's great. So it really speaks also to the power of a single source of truth, right? Is that the humans that are pointing the fingers when they actually are looking at a shared facts that they believe, it becomes a little bit easier to agree with each other and actually get to solving the problem.
Yeah.
Listen, I really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you
Thanks
so much for being here. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thanks.
All right, so now we're going to get ready to dive in to a little bit more detail and start to go through some of the innovations that we've been able to bring to market, both ourselves and with partners over the past year. And as part of that, we're also going to share with you some new and exciting announcements of things that are new today at Transform. And to take us through that, I'd like to welcome up our Chief Product Officer at AppDynamics, Linda Tong.
Thanks, Danny. I'm so excited to be here today. As he mentioned earlier, we're paving our way towards full-stack AI ops through our central nervous system vision by unlocking visibility, insight, and action. Today, I'm really excited to introduce you to some of the key investments we made over the past year to unlock a lot of this vision, as well as share with you some exciting announcements. So it all starts with visibility. We talk about needing to know about every step and every journey for every customer. And to do that, you need full-stack observability. And I'm proud to say that AppDynamics offers best-in-class breadth and depth of coverage across the business, user experience, and applications. And when we talk about applications, we're also including infrastructure. And we know many of you are deployed across both cloud and traditional infrastructure, so it's really important to bring that all together in a single view, which is why a key part of last year's investment was around getting you deeper visibility into the network and infrastructure layers, whether you're cloud or traditional. So starting off, many large enterprises have about 97% of their workloads still running in traditional environments. It's really critical for you to understand what's happening down at the network layer, which is why we built an integration with Cisco ACI, or Application-Centric Infrastructure. With this visibility, you can better understand how underlying network performance within your data center impacts your application experience. This also helps application and network teams come together and troubleshoot more effectively. In addition to that, we launched a new integration with Cisco Intersight. This way, we can get you visibility into the underlying hardware that's supporting your application and help you understand how performance impacts your end-user experience. I know that many of you are also building applications in the cloud, which is why we launched support for AWS CloudWatch. By building this native integration, we pull CloudWatch metrics directly into our flow map so you can easily identify how your underlying cloud infrastructure impacts your application. We also built a Kubernetes cluster agent, one that gives you deep visibility across your Kubernetes containers, clusters, applications, and pods. And for those of you living on the edge and leveraging serverless functions, I'm glad to say we've got you covered as well. We launched support for AWS Lambda with Java applications back in the summer. We then expanded that to support Node.js in the fall. And today, I'm excited to announce Python support, which is in beta, and soon we'll be GAing that. In addition to that, we understand that many of you leverage a multi-cloud strategy, so we went big with Azure. Back in November, we made a major upgrade to our .NET agent so that we could support .NET 3.0 for core. We also launched support for Azure App Services and Azure Web Functions. What you see here is just a small sample of how we're trying to unlock visibility to give you that full stack observability within your environment. But this visibility is really critical to unlock something else, specifically insights. Because for us, we think about insights as a critical capability to take all the data that we're consuming to give you the most important insights while removing the noise. We present these insights through a series of lenses that we offer. We talk about the business lens, the application lens, and the user lens. But let's start off with the application lens. This was our original innovation. We gave you a view of your entire application topology. We auto-discovered all the services that were underlying your application and grouped them together in what we call the flow map. We then associated these services into a simplified view and called them a business transaction. They support a single business critical function. And in this case, these are the services that underlie a quick claim service for, say, an insurance application. By grouping these together in business transactions, we can help you understand when there's a performance issue on any one of these services, what part of your business was impacted, which actually takes me to the next lens, the business lens. Specifically, we've built Business IQ to provide you with dashboards to start to associate data from the application and the end user to help you understand how that's impacting your business KPIs and metrics. With this business-centric view, you can start to connect the dots around underlying application performance problems and how they impact your bottom line with your business. And in order to get you to these insights even faster, we launched what we call our BIQ landing page. Out of the box, we start to connect transaction and end-user analytics so we can start to get you these insights without any effort on your part. And beyond the business lens, we really focus on the user lens, because at the end of the day, it's your customer that matters, and how your customer experiences your application is really what you care about. Just last month, we launched our Experience Journey Maps. What you see here is essentially the most frequent paths that your users are traversing within your application. By surfacing this, we can then overlay performance issues on top of this so that you can understand what parts of your application are at risk and quickly triage what to focus on before it impacts your end user. But all of these lenses I just presented wouldn't be possible without our investment in machine learning. And underlying that is our cognition engine. Last year, we announced Cognition Engine to focus on how we can correlate this data and get these insights for you automatically. And over this past year, we've been focused on how do we start to add precision and accuracy to this to make it even better for things like dynamic baselines, anomaly detection, and root cause analysis. As we do this, it's really about bringing together the whole picture of how we identify problems, troubleshoot, and get you to remediation as fast as possible. We want to unlock a world where, say, we identify a problem that's like a code level issue, and we can get you down to that very line of code so you can immediately remediate. And today I'm excited to announce a new feature that gets us one step closer, Deep Code Insights. With Deep Code Insights, you can start to troubleshoot in live production environments. As your developers are identifying exactly where the problem is, we can bring you the shared context between IT and DevOps so you can get to that solution as fast as possible. Speaking of that shared context and all the lenses I just mentioned, it's really about ensuring that you can consume all the insights that we're providing you through your own unique lenses. Within your organization, we know there are plenty of people who want to look at this data in their own way, which is why we launched a modern dashboarding system called Dash Studio. Dash Studio is hyper-focused on giving you the ability to create and customize dashboards any which way you want to surface the most critical insights for you. And so, I've now just covered visibility and insights, which ultimately are about helping you get to action, which is the third pillar of our CNS vision. With actioning, we want to help you move fast and act. However, we know you all have plenty of platforms and products in place to start to take action. So I promise you, I don't want to add another tool to that stack. We want to meet you where you are, which is why last year we launched our Integration Partner Program, one that's hyper-focused on integrating with the products and the platforms that you're already using for actioning. And over the past year, we've been spending time with you to understand what are the biggest impact areas you'd want us to focus on to drive these integrations. And you told us you care about resource scaling, cost optimization, incident response, and CI/CD validation. And so I'm excited to be here today to tell you that we've made progress on all fronts. Let's start with resource scaling and cost optimization. Whether you're under-provisioning or over-provisioning your applications, either your performance suffers or your business suffers. And if you start to take a manual approach, it's incredibly painful and complex and near impossible, which is why we built an integration with Cisco Workload Optimization Manager, or CWOM. With CWOM and the integration I mentioned earlier with Cisco Intersight, you can suddenly start to see how we've been able to build in these views where you can understand what's happening in your underlying infrastructure. And as we identify resource constraints, CWOM will start to make recommendations on optimizations you can make. And if you don't even want to take those optimizations, you could just have CWOM go ahead and run it automatically for you. Then AppDynamics closes the loop by monitoring performance and helping you to problem solve and ensure that everything is resolved and looking green. Next up, incident resolution. It's my favorite topic because many of you have talked to us about ServiceNow. Well, in this world, speed matters. So the last thing you want to be doing is manually creating tickets and hunting around for context to input in those tickets and figuring out how to solve these problems, which is why we built a deep integration with ServiceNow. Now, we automatically identify anomalies, kick off a ServiceNow ticket event, start to attach the relevant context to those tickets so that we can help you solve those problems as fast as possible. And soon, we're going to be announcing bi-directional connectivity with ServiceNow. That way, we can effectively close a loop and help you guarantee we understand exactly what the cause of those problems are across your user and your business and your application. And last but not least, CI/CD validation. We want to help your teams push code to production fast, but with confidence. And in order to do that, we've partnered with Harness. This integration pulls in AppDynamics health rules and performance monitoring capabilities and injects them directly into the CI/CD pipeline. Then Harness can validate these deployments in production, and if they identify performance issues or quality problems, they'll automatically roll back. And if you're incredibly excited about this announcement, we have a great opportunity in which we're offering a special program for a limited time. For the first 10 US-based AppDynamics customers, we're giving you a free trial of AppDynamics and Harness. For more information, simply reach out to appdharness@appdynamics.com. Okay, deep breath. I know what I just presented was a lot of information, and it's really important to see how all these pieces come together. And so that's why I'm excited to introduce Whitney Satin to the stage, who's going to show you how you can leverage these innovations in a more effective way to manage your applications in 2020.
Thank you, Linda. All right, we are going to take a look at how the visibility and insights provided by some of the announcements Linda just shared are creating this shared context in different workflows across different IT teams that's going to enable them to all take better actions in order to deliver those exceptional customer experiences. Now, to do this, we are going to turn to our friends at NextGen Financial. So NextGen Financial, like many customers, is using web and mobile applications in order to deliver a number of their products and services to customers. So things like insurance quotes, loans, or online bill pay. With AppDynamics, we're collecting business metrics across each component of the application. And that's what you see on this top dashboard here. And already I can see I'm getting a proactive yellow alert around my insurance quote, the dollar value there. It's below the baseline of what I would expect. So I want to take special attention there before we start to get into the red. Now, beneath that, I'm also capturing a number of different KPIs across those business transactions that Linda talked about, those fundamental building blocks that match the different actions that customers are taking throughout our application. And again, I can see that there's some yellow. I can see that I have some issues with my quote sent and some response time issues with that apply discount area. So 2 problems. In order to understand how I'm going to prioritize these, I want to take a look at the impact that these are having on my user experience. So I'm going to click into that 450K, and it's going to pop open that experience journey map. So again, this is a very new feature to the whole industry where we're able to actually map screen by screen those pathways that users are taking through the front end of the application. And we're doing this dynamically. So as those user behaviors change, this map will automatically update and allow us to make sure that we're constantly focused on those critical customer pathways. And we don't just map the journey, we're also overlaying performance data on top of this. So now for the first time, we're actually able to understand how any sort of issue on a responsiveness or performance level is actually impacting that user behavior. And in this case, I can go ahead and see that as customers are trying to apply for a discount, they're running into some latency that's causing 70% of them to drop off. Now, I also see an issue around my quotes being sent, but because this apply discount is happening upstream, I'm definitely going to go ahead and take a look and make sure that we can fix that first. So let me go ahead and navigate and get a little bit more detail in my dashboard area. So AppDynamics is collecting a lot of information here, not just about the application environment, and you can see that on the next on our dashboard over here. And what we're looking at is the health of the different application servers, but also the underlying infrastructure that's supporting the application. So again, I know something is wrong with those quote services, but because of the importance of those apply discount areas, I'm going to start there. And it looks like I have something going on with my virtual machines. Now at this point, I'm going to need to work closely with my infrastructure team. And typically with APM tools, this is where we start to get into those silos where the application team is looking at separate data from my infrastructure team. But with AppDynamics, we're providing a much more unified view. And we're doing that with our integration with Cisco Workload Optimizer. Here, now I've switched context. I'm in that infrastructure lens. And what we're looking at here on the screen on the left-hand side is a dependency map. And this is highlighting all the different entities that my infrastructure, that are supporting the application. So everything from the application servers, to the VMs, to the host, to storage. CWAM is pulling all this information, including the app topology information from AppDynamics. And we're not just doing this for our customer-facing applications. You can see that we're actually doing this for all of our different applications in the business. But we're going to focus and stick to NextGen Financial for now. So let's go ahead and see what's happening there. CWAM has automatically detected that based on the information that I'm getting about the application, the recommended response in this particular case is to increase my memory from 6 gigabytes to 7 gigabytes. So let's go ahead. We're going to select this action and apply. Now, back on the application side of things, I'm actually glad to see that it looks like that health is back to normal on the VMs. And from a business perspective, if I scroll down, I can see, in fact, that yes, that apply discount business transaction, back to green. The response time looks good. And actually, on our insurance quotes, we can still see that we've actually upped the dollar value there. We're up to $650K. So looking good, but obviously still yellow. So there's still some remediation that needs to be done. And next, we're going to tackle that quote service. Now, I know from the previous screen that I've solved my infrastructure problem, but so this is likely due to something happening in the application environment. So let's go ahead and dive deeper into AppDynamics. Okay, now with this view, I'm looking at the flow map, and here I'm looking at all. Okay, sorry, I'm seeing something different on this screen, but we're all good. Okay, we are looking at the application flow map here, and this is showing all the different dependencies upstream and downstream that are supporting the application. NextGen Financial is running in a hybrid environment. So some of these services are running on-premise, and some are running in the cloud. And in fact, if I look down at the bottom, I can see one of my services is actually taking advantage of AWS Lambda. All right, but we're here to troubleshoot. So let's go ahead. Let's navigate to my troubleshooting area, pull up my violations and anomalies. And here I'm getting a curated list of all the different anomalies that are being pulled from Cognition Engine. So sure enough, I see first and foremost that I do have an issue with my quote services here, and it's an ongoing anomaly. So let's click into there and get to a view. Now, this with our Cognition Engine, we're using algorithms and machine learning to simplify the view and automatically populate those top suspected root causes. And in this particular case, for my quote services, I can see that I have some CPU violations with my credit check service that's causing some downstream impacts. So let's go ahead and take a deeper look and pull up some snapshots, a snapshot that's going to help me ensure that I'm getting the right information here. So now I've isolated, in this particular view, just the calls that are happening around my credit service functionality. And in this error, if I look very closely, I can see that, in fact, I've pulled up that there is an issue happening at the do-get method within my credit check services. And it looks like there's an arithmetic error that's occurring, a divide by zero, somewhere within line 67. Okay, so this is great from an IT ops perspective. I've been able to get down to the code level issue of what's going on. So with our integration with Jira, I'm actually able to create that ticket and kick it over to my dev team to start to remediate. Sounds good, right? Well, if you're on the dev side, it's actually a little bit more complicated than that. Very rarely do these teams have access to the production environments where this code is running. So they still need to go through additional steps in order to understand where the code is actually firing incorrectly, and oftentimes they're trying to recreate these issues in test environments. Sometimes it's near impossible to recreate these. This is where our deep code insight functionality comes into play. All right, so I'm switching context again. Now I'm at the developer hat on, and I'm looking at a view of deep code insights. And on the main screen, what I'm seeing is all the different code that's executing live in production. All right, so I know from my Jira ticket that I need to be in the do-get method around my credit check services, and I know I'm looking for line 67. But I need more information to know how I'm going to actually write any code fix here. So I'm going to place what's called a dynamic breaking point. So it's essentially a breaking point that's not going to break the code as it's executing and running through. And I placed that at line 67. And now, as you can see below, I've started to collect additional information about the different parameters that are executing at that particular line. So let's go ahead and open one of these. I'm going to open this top one here, and you can see I've actually been able to identify all the different variables that are being executed at that specific line. Okay, well, I know this was an arithmetic error. That was in my information from IT Ops, and yes, here, in fact, I see that the coefficient is set equal to 0. Well, there you go. That's likely what's causing that error message around dividing by 0. So now this is great. I'm armed with the right information. I can go ahead and write my code fix. I'm ready to check it in. And this is where we're going to start to segue into harness. As a developer, I can actually push this new code as a canary release. And it's going to go through an automated pipeline that consists of 3 stages. So first, we're going to run it through dev. Then it'll go through QA. And finally, we're going to deploy it to production. Now, this is where our integration with AppDynamics is so vital. We're actually pulling in those health rules and performance data directly from AppDynamics. And so this way, we're able to get a real-time sense of whether or not this canary release has caused any sort of performance degradation or any issue impacting my end users. But we have a good dev team here. It looks like they wrote the right code. Everything looks healthy. This also helps from an IT ops perspective because now I know that my developers are checking in code that's not going to degrade the performance of my application. So let's go ahead and confirm that this all worked on the IT ops side. Okay, back to my application dashboard. Everything's looking green. And just to go full circle, we're going to go back to that business view. And we see, in fact, all the business transactions look healthy. And my quotes the dollars going through my quote functionality look back to the baseline. So in this quick example, we've shown how we're able to connect a number of different personas throughout the IT organization. Our application teams, our business teams, our development teams, and even into our infrastructure teams. We're using that shared visibility and insight to drive actions all in the service of creating a superior end customer experience. All right, so I know that was a lot, and we're now going to switch gears and put that into a little bit more of a real-world scenario by hearing from a few of our customers. And I'm pleased that we're going to do a deep dive first into hearing what one of our guests of honors here has to say from Alaska Airlines. Let's roll the video.
When people think of Alaska Airlines, they think of airplanes, they think of airports, and that, of course, is the actual business that we're in. But what we're very cognizant of is the fact that e-commerce is the first interaction that many people have with us.
Alaska Airlines is the 5th largest domestic airline in the United States. We do our best to be competitive through scrappy innovation.
We were the first airline to sell airline tickets online. That culture of innovation is driving us to have more guest centricity and more product focus to provide the absolute best guest experience.
Our customers are accessing our site with multiple different platforms, from web to mobile, kiosk at the airport. It's extremely crucial for us to provide consistent digital experience.
Guest experience through our digital platforms is key. If we don't get that right, then they certainly won't become loyal guests. Our technology teams are working in an incredibly complex and data-rich environment.
AppDynamics is providing us deep visibility into our application's performance on front end and back end. That holistic view gives me the peace of mind that we are actually delivering the right experience for our guests. Cognition Engine is taking that dynamic baselining to the next level. The ability to quickly figure out the root cause is a big deal for us, and we are using Cognition Engine to make our mean time to resolution even faster. Our mean time to detection went from hours to less than 10 minutes, which is a huge win for us.
From 2017 to 2018, we were able to reduce the number of Sev 1 outages that we had by 60%, and we're continuing to sustain that.
We are using a hybrid environment on-premise and in the cloud, a lot of microservices and serverless computing.
The adoption of Azure and using the cloud has been a great enabler for our teams. It allows them to break up little bits of business logic, to experiment with them and deploy them quickly.
With AppDynamics, the developers, the engineers who are focused on trying to solve a guest problem can not only consider just the user experience or just the performance of the service in the back end, but how everything ties together.
And in partnership with AppD, we can be sure that we're building solutions that are healthy and reliable.
We can get a holistic view of the performance that really manifests itself in the things that matter to our guests.
I'm really passionate about how we're using the latest technologies to solve real pain points for our customers. The fact that we are making travel experience easy, joyful, and something they look forward to every time they travel makes me excited.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Steve Long, Regional CTO, AppDynamics.
Thank you. Thank you. It's exciting to be here, and I just love to hear from our executives and all these feature and product updates. So I'm Steve Long. I'm the Corporate Technology Officer. I work on technology strategy here at AppDynamics as part of Cisco. But it's not only an honor and a privilege to be up here to be your customer moderator for the panel we have here that we're going to invite on here, but I want to go back a little bit in time. 2010 was the first time I became an AppD customer. I was a VP of operations for an entertainment company. And the second time I became a customer of AppD, I was the CIO of a fintech company. So I want to welcome on stage other customers of AppD. Come on up on stage here and we'll get some introductions done. Wonderful. Welcome. You guys excited?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Have a seat. So I want to start off by introducing Nemo, who you just saw from Alaska Airlines on stage. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and why the digital experience is so important to your business.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to be here. You guys already know me from the video. So I'm software engineering manager at Alaska Airlines e-commerce department. I've been with Alaska for the last 5 years now. Actually, I transitioned into a new role leading 2 of our product teams. But before that, I was leading our site reliability engineering team, which oversees our entire digital platform to make sure they are reliable, up and running, and consistent. I built it up from that team from ground up into a world-class SRE team, and we couldn't have done without AppDynamics. We're using many of the AppDynamics products, but to monitor our application side, our end-user response time and end-user experience, as well as the infrastructure. So it gives us the 360 view of our application stack. We are running hybrid, complex environment, both on-prem and into the cloud, and feasibility is super important for us. It's no secret that Alaska Airlines, we are obsessed to provide the best guest experience possible, and we're leveraging AppDynamics to do that.
Wow. I know as a customer and flight tracker and even my luggage tracking, I'm glad you're here to tell us more about that. Wonderful. Earl, I'd love to hear more about you, your role at PCSU, and how the digital experience is important to your business.
Well, digital experience, we're in the fintech space, and PSU is the largest credit union service organization in the country. We have about 1,200 credit unions and 160 we run about 160 million transactions a day. We're First Data, third largest customer. So we produce services for credit unions because they don't have the financial wherewithal to compete with the large banks. Is basically in a co-op model is what our business is all about. And in the banking space, there's competition. If the digital experience isn't phenomenal, there's choices. So they're going to pick up and potentially go elsewhere. So the visibility that AppDynamics gives us of our app stack and the user side of our applications is paramount to being able to deliver that experience. And it's been a great journey.
Wonderful. Yeah, I've been in fintech. Time is money, so wonderful to have you here. And then Ron, JobVite, tell us a little bit about your company, your experiences, and how the digital experience and what it means to you. I know I've used JobVite before personally, so love to hear.
I'm Ron Teeter. I'm Chief Architect at JobVite. JobVite is a award-winning, market-leading talent acquisition platform. Like you said, You've used it. If you're in the Bay Area, you use it. If you're outside of the Bay Area, you've probably used it, and you might not know it. But basically, we cater to multiple personas. We have the job seekers that are coming in to find the next job they're going to love. We have the employees at the hiring company that are looking for their next teammates. And then we have our internal stakeholders who are looking to make sure that that's working well, that those stakeholders are getting their maximum value out of that matchmaking. And, there's very few things that are more important in your life than what you do with your career, what you do with the time of your value. So we cater to that market. We've been using AppDynamics for about 6 years. We were blind when I joined the company. Stuff would break and we didn't know what.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there as customers, sure.
And so over the years, we've invested in AppDynamics. We've invested in visibility. We've invested in moving from a traditional dev and operations culture to a full-functioning DevOps organization.
Wow. Good shift.
So it's you have to make these transformations, right? And the nice thing for me today is seeing that, AppDynamics is seeing that same vision and acting on it. We were one of Harness's first customers, and the first thing we did was connect it to AppDynamics. So, definitely know that marriage is made in heaven. That's going to work. But the next thing is to get into what you're looking for from an outstanding experience.
Yeah.
And, making sure that every application is going through, making sure that every recruiter is reading that application, and being able to respond to that candidate in a timely fashion is our core mission.
Great. Well, welcome to the stage, and that's great to hear about your digital experiences and what it means to you. But I want to shift into the strategy that both Danny and Anuj talked about. It's kind of divided up into 3 pillars. So that visibility pillar, I'm going to throw the first question to you, Earl. How has opening up, looking at performance improvements, or how have you found performance being unlocked from seeing that end-to-end visibility and being able to look at the cross-domain things like cloud services as well as data centers?
Well, backing up 5 years ago, as Ron said, we were blind. We fundamentally had synthetic transactions on 16 of our 30-odd Tier 1 applications.
Yeah.
We knew the app was broke on those 16 apps 5 minutes before the phone rang, but we didn't know what else because we didn't have the data to show us what was going on. And our AppDynamics, when instrumenting with machine and APM agents, we really did nothing. We used it out of the box. There was a couple of spots where we had to do some POJOs for custom classes that our app dev team had wrote. But out of the box, it built the app map. We used the detection models with 3 and 4 standard deviations out of the box today, still, 5 years later. And
did you ever find anything that wasn't
absolutely?
Wasn't there?
And if you haven't started this journey, if you're not visualizing your app stack, you really need to. The digital experience to your customer is paramount, and without doing this, you can't. Monitoring is really about visualizing the environment, the infrastructure, and application. And from the application performance side, both the app, the data center side and the real user side, what the users are seeing, I'm sure somebody will get to here before long, but. We were blind. We could see nothing. What I can tell you is when you start this journey, putting AppDynamics in is like walking into a room and turning the lights on.
Yep. You
can see everything. What I promise you will see GVMs that are not tuned and causing problems. You will see load balancers that are not. You will, and changing load balancing characteristics so the load gets shifted.
I think we all laugh because we're shaking our heads going, I remember
everybody that we
pointing traffic to a test environment.
That's done this journey will tell you these same things. But it gets you visibility of, large vendor of ours on Cyber Monday that processes about 70% of the credit and debit swipes in this country had a problem on Cyber Monday. I knew about it before they did because they're a third-party back end to us. AppDynamics nailed it immediately. I was on the phone with them, and they're going, "What are you talking about? We don't have a problem." "Yeah, you do." I sent them a screenshot. 2 hours later, a couple of VPs and a CEO of that company are on the phone. We're having whoops, we ran out of capacity. Really, on Monday? But anyway.
So that really speaks to the visibility pillar. Yeah. And if we move over into actually seeing these problems from an insight perspective, Nemo, why don't I throw this question at you? What has APM done to you, not only just in your IT organization by giving you insights, but as well as your business side? Because they're 2 sides and they generally don't talk the same language.
Absolutely. So from the feasibility side, the first time we installed AppDynamics, you always surprised with the amount of feasibility you get out of it. Absolutely, and that was amazing for us. But in order to stay ahead of the curve and make sure we are providing the best experience possible for our guests, we needed to minimize that mean time to detection and mean time to resolution, which was actually killing us before that. So one of the things that AppDynamics real-time insights and as well as feasibility did for us, and you have seen it in the video, our mean time to detection went from hours to less than 10 minutes right now, which is amazing. And that reduced also the mean time to resolution because we have deep insight in what's going on. In addition to that, we had that most people, 60%, are looking at their digital device when they woke up. For me, 2.5 years, it was AppDynamics dashboards. That was the first thing
So you don't do TMZ, you don't
no,
do that?
I might start that now. But,
okay.
Yeah.
I like
AppDynamics was, AppDynamics was that TMC for me for that times. And
we're technologists. I mean, it's our...
With the hybrid environment that we are running and with our shift to cloud-first approach, the deep insight was really important for us. It allowed us to figure out what applications we need to move to the cloud, what problem areas our guests are having, and give us like that 360-degree view of our entire stack, which was awesome.
Wonderful. So that talks about the insights. And Ron, I'm going to throw a question at you around our actioning pillar, really, how that has been beneficial to you from an actioning perspective and a machine learning perspective. And then I kind of want to the secondary question is, what are you excited about with AI, and what do you see the future of AI?
Well, I think those two are coupled, and I'm glad that you asked the question that way because ultimately, the first order is visibility. You need to be able to see what the problem is, that you can act on it.
Yeah.
But the second pillar is, what do I act on first? What's going to make a difference? The third one is really how do I know whether or not it's something I need to act on? Or how can I act on it before it's reported, right? And it's that third piece that we really need to focus on next, right? In general, I think many companies that have APM are in one of the first two pillars. There are very few companies that are fully engaged into the third pillar yet.
Actioning, yeah.
I'm really pleased with the work that our team has been able to do over the last 2 years, to the point now where when there is a problem, in many cases, the problem's been resolved before it's reported.
Yeah.
Right? So we get these stale calls coming in through support saying, hey, there's a problem. It's like, well, there was a problem 15 minutes ago. It's fixed.
Yeah. So you've been down the continuum of actually being able to trust that you know that it's a problem and fix it, rather than not trust it and maybe fix it and cause another problem.
Yeah, and the first thing we did was we just automated a lot of the what would you do by hand.
Yeah.
Right? I do a thread dump on that JVM and see what the problem is. Okay, do a thread dump, move it in S3. Now the engineers can get to it when they need to, right? As we move down this path into more powerful tools like Deep Insights, that's really where we want, right? I don't want to bring the engineers to the data. I want to bring the data to the engineer.
So is the future coming to you now, it seems? From an AI?
Oh, yeah. I've been hankering for it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Nemo, on your side, we hear a lot about the digital transformation journey. Share a little bit about how that has been meaningful to you, and it's obviously never ending, but share a little bit about what that means to you and your organization and how that's been impacted by AppDynamics.
Definitely. So the digital transformation for us, the two things. First was our move to the cloud in order to increase our scalability, flexibility, and the speed of innovation. That provided us huge upper hand and give us a way to iterate our products faster to market. But it also introduced a complexity in our technology stack, and that's where AppDynamics came in. It made us, our engineers, connected more what's going on with the user experience. With the data-driven approach and the insights that they have, they can make data-driven decisions to figure out how the latest feature they push to production is impacting our guests, and how that change is impacting application performance, basically. Because these things have real impacts on our guests. It means long lines at the airport. Sometimes, for the worst case, it might mean flight delays, right? So the digital transformation was very key for us. It unlocked for us a huge capabilities, and AppDynamics has been part of that.
Yeah, I'd like to steal a line from Anuj. Previously, he said is, you have this most granular and contextual data to work with, and I think your digital transformation journey has been impacted by having those key things in the data to make business decisions. So
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. Earl, I'm gonna throw a curveball at you. What's the most exciting thing about being a technologist? What does that mean to you today about being a technologist, and what's the most exciting thing about it?
So, from my perspective, the thing I'm most excited about is the application of machine learning across larger and larger sets of data across our infrastructure, where I can start pulling in data from infrastructure and switches and routers and F5, along with application data, and use machine learning across that data set to provide actionable insights that I can trust and act on. And that's going to continue to grow. I don't see any stopping of it. And it's going to provide us better insights and better decision points, because we all know that that providing analytics over larger sets of data and the results that has brought us to this point, and it's just going to continue to get better and better. And as AppDynamics has shown, they're focused on doing that as well. Looking forward to what's coming in the future with that application of that technology across the data sets that we have in our infrastructures.
Yeah, I always like to say, I now can look at a product and say, a dumb CIO like me can go, here's the who, what, when, where, why of the problem. And, before I couldn't do that. And so it's an exciting time. So that's great.
And here's what I do about it.
Now you have it. It's that dossier. Here's the answer to the question. Yeah. Wonderful. So with all the changes, Ron, and JobVite and your organization and where you've been, can you share a little bit about, how those massive changes that you've gone through, how that's changed your business's future and your career growth?
Sure. I mean, obviously there's a personal and a team perspective here, right? Yeah. Personally, I'm sitting here on the stage. That wouldn't have happened 6 years ago. I've been recognized as one of your top 25 IT innovators. Those are personal accolades, but they were delivered by a large team.
Yeah.
Right? And while it's good for my professional growth to be able to get out and talk about the work that we've been doing and how we're advancing the status quo, if you will, everybody on my team is able to step up from the mundane and pursue their career objectives as well, right? So everybody is moving up, right? We're trying to take the people out of servicing the machines and make the machines service the people.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I know personally as a customer, it literally changed my career. I joined this company because of that, and it helped my teams have their nights and weekends back. Maybe not immediately overnight, but over time, when you start to fix problems, find them, and move the company forward, I think it's a great thing. So that was our lightning round, and I really want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy days, coming here on site, and being part of our customer panel. So with that, I want to thank you. Exciting day here at AppD Transform in San Francisco. I'm going to invite Danny Winokur back on stage to close us out. So thank you again for showing up and sharing your stories.
Nice job. Nice job. Thanks, Steve. All right, we're coming down the home stretch. Love those stories, and I think we have found our new marketing tagline, AppD is my TMZ. I like it. All right, so we're at this really interesting time, and you've now had an opportunity to hear from not only those of us on the leadership team at AppDynamics, but also the leadership from Cisco, and then obviously a number of customers. And you've seen how the solutions that we're building are empowering all of you that have joined us today to be agents of transformation, right? To be the change agents within your organizations that drive the technology, the operating model, the cultural, the organizational changes that have to ultimately come together in order to make you successful in competing in a world where the application has become the business and the new competitive currency is the digital experience that you're delivering through those applications. We talked about the central nervous system, the vision that we launched a year ago, and the progress that we've made in building out that vision this year, and the long roadmap ahead of us as we look to the future for the decade ahead. There's going to be a lot of work to be done in AppDynamics, in Cisco, and with the partners that make up that ecosystem. And we're also talking about how we've applied those tools, those technologies, and the latest innovations to bring about this new operating model, what we've called BizDevOps, that allow those silos to break down, teams to work together more closely, build careers, like you just heard from Ron, from actually bringing about those successful changes inside the organization. Okay, so we're going to get ready now to wrap up the live stream. I wanted to let all of you that are on that live stream know that you're now in a virtual event environment where you can actually go ahead and join breakout sessions that will allow you to click deeper and actually go in and learn more about many of the technologies and tools that we've been talking about today from both AppDynamics and our partners. And so thank you very much for joining Transform 2020. And for those of you in the room, we're going to invite you in just a moment to join us as well. But we'll sign off on the online feed.